Listen here, sweetheart. I don't know what ghetto you crawled out of, but on my flight, you follow my rules. Crack. Brittany Mackenzie's palm struck across Dr. Zara Washington's face with a sound that silenced the entire cabin. The tablet crashed from Zara's hands. Her reading glasses flew off, skittering under seat 13A. Gasps echoed through the plane. Brittany towered over her victim, finger jabbing downward. That's what happens when you people don't listen the first time. Scattered papers floated to the floor, executive documents marked Meridian Airlines Board Meeting Confidential. A gold badge glinted among the debris, clearly corporate-level identification. Zara touched her stinging cheek, completely calm. Her voice carried through the shocked silence. Thank you, Brittany. You just made this very simple. Have you ever been so utterly humiliated that your first instinct was revenge, but you chose something far more devastating instead? This happened exactly 10 minutes ago on Flight 447 to Atlanta. Let me tell you what led to that slap. 30 minutes earlier, Dr. Zara Washington stepped onto her own aircraft, Meridian Airlines Flight 447, dressed in faded jeans and a simple hoodie. As CEO, she conducted monthly mystery passenger evaluations, experiencing her airline through customers' eyes. Today's test would cost more than she ever imagined. Her boarding pass showed seat 2A first class, but she'd requested 14C in coach. Real-life stories like these revealed more about company culture than any executive report. Flight attendant Brittany Mackenzie approached with practiced authority. At 28, she'd worked for Meridian 3 years, building a reputation for maintaining order that supervisors praised, but passengers endured. Excuse me, your ticket says 2A, but you're sitting in 14C. Trying to upgrade yourself without paying? Zara looked up from her tablet, displaying quarterly reports she'd been reviewing. I requested this seat change. My boarding pass is right here. Honey, I've seen every scam, Brittany's voice carried across nearby rows. You people always try to game the system somehow. The businessman in 13A, Richard Hawthorne, nodded approvingly. He'd noticed Zara's appearance when she boarded torn sneakers, discount hoodie, braided hair that screamed urban. Finally, someone was keeping these people in line. Ma'am, I have my confirmation right here. Zara reached for her phone to show the seat change request. Brittany snatched the device away. Passengers like you can't afford to replace airline property when you break it. She examined Zara's clothing with obvious disdain. Those worn sneakers and that hoodie tell me everything I need to know about your situation. In row 15B, college student Keisha Williams started live streaming on TikTok. Y'all, watch this flight attendant profile this black woman. This is crazy. Her viewer count climbed 50, 85, 127. Zara remained composed. I understand there's confusion, but if you check my boarding pass... Stop lying! Brittany's voice rose sharply. I know troublemakers when I see them. You're disrupting my entire flight with this ghetto drama. The elderly woman in 16D, Margaret Foster, whispered to her husband, In my day, people knew their place. She'd watched the interaction with growing satisfaction, remembering when such scenes ended differently. But passenger Robert Carter in 12A felt uncomfortable. As a federal prosecutor, he recognized discrimination when he saw it. He quietly activated his phone's camera, capturing Brittany's escalating aggression. Keisha's live stream exploded with comments. This is racial profiling. Sue the airline. Where's the manager? Her viewer count hit 200, then 300. Brittany grabbed Zara's tablet next. Company property stays with the crew until landing. You clearly don't understand how airlines work. The device displayed Q3 Executive Summary Confidential before Brittany closed it, missing the significance entirely. She also overlooked Zara's boarding pass corner showing Diamond Elite Lifetime status and the subtle Harvard Business School logo on her hoodie. Ma'am, I need that tablet for work. Zara's voice stayed level, professional. Work. Brittany laughed loudly. What work? Let me guess. Social media? Hair braiding? Maybe some MLM scheme? Richard Hawthorne chuckled. Several passengers turned to stare. The cabin's atmosphere grew tense as sides formed, those enjoying the spectacle, and others growing uncomfortable with the obvious bias. Zara reached for her phone to document the harassment. "I have the right to—" "Put that phone away!" Brittany screamed. "You people always want to record everything instead of following simple instructions." Keisha's live stream chat erupted. "This is insane! Pure racism! Record everything!" Her viewers climbed past 500. The confrontation reached its breaking point when Zara tried once more to show her legitimate documentation. Brittany had moved beyond professional conduct into personal territory, her prejudices fully exposed. "I told you to stop lying. Maybe this will teach you some respect." The slap came fast and hard, Brittany's palm connecting with Zara's cheek in a sharp crack that echoed through the cabin. Complete silence followed. Someone's drink hit the floor. A child started crying. Keisha's phone captured everything. Her viewer count jumped to 1,200 instantly as comments flooded the screen. "Did she just hit her? Assault! Call police! That's what you get for being disrespectful." Brittany's justification rang hollow in the stunned cabin. "Maybe next time you'll listen when the crew gives instructions." Zara's scattered papers included documents that would have revealed everything: executive summaries, board meeting agendas, quarterly reports marked with CEO approval signatures. Her cheap phone case actually contained 2 devices, her personal iPhone and a corporate-issued executive communicator. But Brittany saw none of it. She saw only what her prejudices allowed: a black woman in casual clothes who didn't belong in her cabin. "I want everyone to remember exactly what just happened here," Zara said quietly, touching her reddening cheek. "Mind your own business," Brittany snapped at Robert Carter, who'd stood up in protest. "She got exactly what she deserved." But the damage was spreading beyond the cabin. Keisha's video had been shared 47 times in 3 minutes. #Meridian Airlines. Assault started trending as secondary recordings uploaded from multiple angles. The clock started ticking from that moment. Brittany McKenzie had exactly 10 minutes before her world imploded completely. She'd just assaulted her own boss, and 200 people had watched it happen live. As touching stories go, this one would end with justice. But first, it would get much worse. Timeline: 8 minutes until landing. 8 minutes until Brittany's career ends. Senior flight attendant Derek Williams rushed down the aisle, drawn by passenger murmurs and the unmistakable tension radiating from row 14. At 42, he'd seen every type of in-flight incident during his 15 years with Meridian, but the eerie silence told him this was different. "What's happening here?" Derek's trained eyes swept the scene-scattered papers, a red handprint on Zara's cheek, multiple phones pointed in their direction like weapons. Brittany straightened defensively, her confidence returning with backup present. "This passenger was being disruptive and threatening crew safety. I had to maintain order and protect other passengers." "Threatening?" Robert Carter stood up, his prosecutor instincts fully engaged. "She hit a passenger, Derek. I saw the whole thing. This woman never raised her voice or made any aggressive moves." Derek studied Zara's face, noting the visible mark, her unnaturally calm demeanor, the way she was methodically organizing papers as if this was a business meeting. Something felt off about the entire situation. "Brittany, did you physically strike a passenger?" "She was reaching for her phone after I explicitly told her not to. She was being aggressive and non-compliant. I had to stop her before she escalated the situation further. You know how these people can get." Keisha's live stream had exploded to 15,000 viewers. Her TikTok comments moved too fast to read. "Fire her now! Lawsuit incoming! This is assault! Racism caught on camera!" She'd started a second stream on Instagram, capturing different angles as more passengers joined the recording. The social media wildfire was spreading beyond the plane. Marcus Thompson in 18C posted to Twitter, "Just witnessed assault on Meridian Air flight. Flight attendant slapped black passenger for no reason. Within minutes, it had 200 retweets and climbing. In first class, purser Janet Morrison received an emergency call from ground control. Her face paled as she listened to the report. Flight 447, we're getting multiple reports of a serious passenger incident. Please confirm your current status immediately. Janet grabbed the intercom, unaware of the full severity. Minor delay in cabin service due to passenger compliance issues. Stand by for updates. But passengers throughout the plane were uploading videos faster than the crew could contain. The incident was escaping their control in real time. Sarah Kim in 20D live-streamed on Facebook. Discrimination and assault happening right now on Meridian Airlines. Her co-workers were already sharing the video. The businessman Richard Hawthorne sensed the shifting mood around him. His earlier approval of Brittany's actions was becoming a serious liability as cameras turned toward anyone who'd supported the discrimination. He ducked lower in his seat, suddenly fascinated by his Sky Mall magazine. Margaret Foster whispered nervously to her husband, "Maybe we should stay out of this, Harold. This is getting too big." Derek tried his standard de-escalation protocol. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize for any confusion or miscommunication. We'll sort this out properly once we reach the gate." Confusion? Zara's voice carried new authority that made Derek pause mid-sentence. "Your colleague committed assault. That's not confusion, that's a federal crime under USC Title 49, Section 46504. Her precise legal citation surprised everyone within earshot. Most passengers couldn't quote federal aviation law from memory. Derek felt something shift in the cabin's power dynamic, though he couldn't identify exactly what. 6 minutes to landing. Captain Michelle Torres's voice crackled over the intercom. "Flight attendants, we have airport security and federal agents waiting at gate B7. The control tower reports multiple social media incidents involving our crew on this aircraft." Brittany's confidence cracked visibly. "Federal agents? This is being completely blown out of proportion. It was just necessary to maintain cabin safety and order." But Zara had been making strategic phone calls on what appeared to be a second, more sophisticated device. Her first call was brief, coded. "Michael, code black. Flight 447, assault on CEO. Activate crisis protocol immediately. Full legal team." Derek caught fragments of the conversation. CEO? Crisis protocol? That couldn't be right. But Zara's second device, clearly a high-end corporate phone, suggested this passenger had resources and connections far beyond what Brittany had assumed. Keisha's viewers were connecting dots faster than the crew. Comments flooded in. "Why does she have two phones? Those look like confidential business documents. She's way too calm and professional. Harvard logo on her hoodie. Check that boarding pass, it looks like first class." The live stream chat was performing detective work in real time. "She's not just a passenger. Something big is coming. That flight attendant is about to be destroyed." 4 minutes to landing. Ground control patched through to Janet with increasing urgency. "Flight 447, we need an immediate detailed incident report. Multiple passengers reporting crew assault with racial motivation. The FBI and DOT have been officially notified." "FBI? DOT?" Janet's voice carried over the cabin intercom accidentally. Passengers throughout the plane heard the escalation clearly. The mood shifted from entertainment to serious legal consequences. Brittany turned pale, her bravado finally cracking. "FBI? For what exactly? I maintained proper order. She was being disruptive and threatening. Ask the other passengers." But when she looked around for support, the passengers who'd initially approved were now avoiding eye contact. Richard Hawthorne was pretending to sleep. Margaret Foster was studying her hands intently. Meanwhile, Zara was methodically gathering her scattered papers with the precision of someone accustomed to organizing important documents. Her movements were deliberate, calculated, and professional. She'd retrieved materials that Brittany had dismissed: quarterly reports, board meeting minutes, executive communications marked CEO Eyes Only. Derek noticed the paper's official headers and corporate seals. His airline training kicked in. He'd seen executive communications before during his brief stint in corporate liaison. These weren't passenger documents. These were the kind of materials that only senior leadership accessed. "Ma'am, could I please see your identification for our incident report?" Derek asked quietly, professional curiosity overriding protocol. Zara looked up from organizing her papers, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Of course, Derek. Though I suspect you'll find it rather illuminating." She reached into her leather bag, not for a driver's license, but for what appeared to be a corporate ID badge. The movement was deliberate, theatrical. Every passenger watched with anticipation. Keisha's camera zoomed in automatically. 2 minutes to landing. The cabin fell into tense silence as engines throttled back for final descent. 23 passengers had recorded some portion of the incident. #Meridian Airlines. Assault was trending in 6 cities. Local news stations were already preparing segments for the evening broadcast. Brittany made one final desperate attempt to control the narrative over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we experienced a minor disturbance with an unruly passenger who refused to follow crew instructions. The situation has been resolved according to federal aviation safety protocols." "Unruly?" Robert Carter's voice carried prosecutorial authority. "She assaulted a compliant passenger. We all witnessed unprovoked violence." Multiple passengers began speaking at once, their voices overlapping. "That's completely false. She hit her for absolutely no reason. This is pure discrimination. We have it all on video." Margaret Foster tried, shrinking into her seat as passengers' anger focused on anyone who'd initially supported Brittany's actions. Zara stood slowly, papers organized in her hands like a boardroom presentation. Her movement commanded attention in ways that surprised everyone, including Derek. This wasn't how assault victims typically behaved. This was how executives took control of chaotic situations and prepared for decisive action. The plane touched down with a slight bump, engines dying as they rolled toward the gate. Timeline: 2 minutes to gate. Time for truth. The aircraft rolled slowly toward gate B7, its engines winding down with mechanical precision. Outside the windows, passengers could see airport security vehicles, their red and blue lights creating an ominous light show on the tarmac. FBI agents in dark suits stood waiting beside DOT investigators carrying official briefcases. But inside the cabin, all attention focused on the woman in seat 14C who was about to change everything. Zara stood with fluid grace, her scattered papers now organized like a corporate presentation. The red mark on her cheek had darkened into a clear handprint, creating stark evidence against her calm, professional demeanor. Every phone in the cabin pointed toward her as she moved to the front with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms filled with powerful executives. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who addressed shareholders and board members regularly, "I want to thank you all for documenting what happened here today. Your videos will be absolutely crucial in the federal investigation that follows this incident." Keisha's live stream hit 35,000 viewers, comments flowing like a digital waterfall. "She sounds completely different. That's not how assault victims talk. Something massive is about to happen. This lady has serious power." Brittany sensed the fundamental shift in cabin dynamics but couldn't identify the source. "Ma'am, please return to your seat immediately. Federal regulations require passengers to remain seated until we reach the gate." "Oh, but I think I'll stand right here, Brittany." Zara's tone carried new steel that made several passengers straighten unconsciously. "You asked what ghetto I crawled out of. Let me answer that question with complete accuracy." Derek felt his stomach drop as her entire demeanor transformed before their eyes. "I crawled out of Harvard Business School, where I graduated summa cum laude with a master's in corporate strategy and aviation management. Before that, I earned my PhD in organizational psychology from Stanford. I then worked my way up through 20 years of aviation management, starting as a gate agent and climbing every single rung of this industry's ladder. Derek felt the blood drain from his face. Harvard Business School, Stanford PhD, 20 years in aviation management. None of this fits Brittany's narrative of a disruptive passenger. The first revelation. Zara reached into her leather bag. Not for a driver's license, but for a sophisticated executive identification badge with multiple security clearances and holographic verification strips. She held it high enough for every camera to capture the details clearly, rotating it so the security features caught the cabin lighting. Dr. Zara Washington, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Airlines. Employee identification number 001, the founder's number, reserved for the person who controls this entire organization. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's clipboard clattered to the floor with a sharp crack. Janet, watching from first class, gasped audibly over the intercom system she'd forgotten to deactivate. Richard Hawthorne's face drained of all color as he realized he'd been nodding approvingly while the CEO was being racially profiled and assaulted. But Brittany's world didn't just crack, it exploded into 1,000 irreparable pieces. That's completely impossible, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. You can't be... You're not... This has to be fake. The CEO? Zara's voice remained calm, devastatingly professional. The woman whose signature appears on every employment contract in this company? The person who personally approved your salary increase of $2,400 last year? The individual who just watched you commit felony assault on federal property while 35,000 people live-streamed every second? Keisha's stream exploded with activity. She's the actual CEO! Oh my God! The flight attendant just slapped her own boss! The viewer count jumped to 50,000 as shares multiplied exponentially across every social media platform. The hidden truth emerges in detail. You see, Brittany, I conduct comprehensive mystery passenger evaluations on the third Tuesday of every month. It's called executive oversight, a practice I personally implemented after our customer discrimination complaints increased 34% last quarter, costing us $8.7 million in legal settlements. She pulled out a detailed report from her scattered papers. Today's route, Flight 447, was specifically chosen because passenger complaints on this route increased 67% in the past 6 months. I needed to understand why. Derek finally found his voice, though it cracked with stress. Dr. Washington, I had absolutely no idea. If I'd known who you were... If you'd known what, Derek? Her question cut through his excuse like a surgical blade. That I was the CEO? Would that have changed how any passenger should be treated? Should only executives receive basic human dignity and respect? The question hung in the air like an indictment of the entire aviation industry's culture. Robert Carter, the federal prosecutor, was frantically taking detailed notes on his phone. This wasn't just assault anymore. This was a masterclass in corporate culture analysis and systematic discrimination documentation. Legal precision unleashes full force. Zara pulled out her corporate phone and began reading with prosecutorial precision that would make federal attorneys envious. Brittany McKenzie, Employee Identification 4847, hired March 15, 2021. Current salary $38,400 annually. You have violated multiple federal laws. She counted off on her fingers. USC Title 49, Section 46504 assault aboard an aircraft, which carries a maximum penalty of 20 years imprisonment. USC Title 42, Section 1981 civil rights violations under federal law. Company policy violations include Section 14.2 regarding passenger treatment, 18.7 concerning racial discrimination, and 23.1 covering unauthorized use of physical force. She looked directly at the live stream cameras. All violations comprehensively documented on multiple video platforms with precise timestamps, GPS coordinates, and extensive witness testimony from federal prosecutors, business executives, and 47 passengers. The economic earthquake begins to devastate. Our stock opened this morning at $47.23 per share on the New York Stock Exchange. In the 14 minutes since your assault was live-streamed, it has dropped $4.18 per share. That represents $63.7 million in market capitalization lost because of your behavior. She consulted her corporate phone. Our customer service department has received 342 complaint calls in the past 12 minutes. #boycott. Meridian is trending in 17 cities. Our competitor airlines are already capitalizing on this incident in their marketing campaigns. Margaret Foster whispered urgently to her husband, "Harold, we own 500 shares of Meridian stock. This is costing us thousands of dollars." But Zara wasn't finished with the financial devastation report. Employee liability insurance doesn't cover criminal assault charges, Brittany. You're personally liable for corporate damages, estimated conservatively at $2.3 million and climbing every minute this video spreads. The phone calls that reshape corporate history. Zara speed-dialed her executive assistant with the efficiency of someone who'd managed crises involving hundreds of millions of dollars. "Sarah, activate Code Black protocol immediately. Emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. Send discrimination and assault protocols to our legal department with highest priority. Alert our crisis management team and prepare comprehensive statements for major media outlets." The second call went directly to her chief legal officer. "Patricia, it's Zara. I need federal assault charges filed against employee 4847 within the hour. We have multiple video evidence from different angles, witness testimony from a federal prosecutor, and clear documentation of premeditated discrimination. This transcends termination. This is criminal prosecution territory." Derek realized he was witnessing corporate crisis management at the highest level. This wasn't just about one flight attendant's poor judgment anymore. This was about the entire company's reputation, stock valuation, federal compliance, and potential congressional investigation. A third call went to corporate communications. "Michael, prepare for national media attention. CNN, Fox, NBC, and major airlines trade publications will be calling within the hour. Our response needs to demonstrate decisive leadership and zero tolerance for discrimination. The passengers choose their sides carefully." Robert Carter stood up with formal authority. "Dr. Washington, I'm Assistant Federal Prosecutor Robert Carter, Northern District of Georgia. I witnessed the entire incident from initial contact through assault. I'll be providing official testimony and coordinating with federal authorities to ensure full prosecution." The businessman Richard Hawthorne suddenly found his voice, though it trembled noticeably. "Dr. Washington, I want to formally apologize for any inappropriate reactions or comments. I clearly completely misunderstood the situation, and I'm ashamed of my behavior." But Zara's response was ice-cold, delivered with the precision of someone accustomed to corporate accountability. "Mr. Hawthorne, you didn't misunderstand anything. You approved of what you thought was a black woman being put in her place by authority. Your apology is noted in the record and rejected. Your true character was revealed when you thought there would be no consequences." Margaret Foster tried to disappear entirely into her seat, realizing her earlier supportive comments had been captured on multiple recordings that would likely appear in federal court proceedings. The social media avalanche becomes unstoppable. Keisha provided live commentary to her rapidly growing audience. "Y'all, this is the wildest thing I've ever witnessed. A flight attendant just slapped her own CEO and still doesn't fully understand what's about to happen to her life." Secondary videos were uploading across all platforms simultaneously. Twitter. Meridian CEO assault trending nationally with 47,000 tweets. Instagram. 23 different angles of the incident uploaded within minutes. TikTok. Remix videos with dramatic music already garnering millions of views. Facebook. Local and national news stations requesting exclusive interview permissions. LinkedIn. Corporate executives sharing the video as a case study in leadership crisis. The federal response accelerates rapidly. Captain Torres's voice came over the intercom with official gravity. Dr. Washington, this is Captain Torres. Airport security, FBI agents, DOT investigators, and federal marshals are prepared to board in 60 seconds. How would you like to coordinate the arrest procedure? Captain Torres, please coordinate with airport police for the immediate arrest of employee 4847 on federal assault charges. I'll be conducting the preliminary investigation interview personally with federal authorities to ensure complete documentation. Brittany finally grasped the complete magnitude of her situation as handcuffs appeared outside the aircraft windows. Dr. Washington, please. I didn't know who you were. I have 2 children. I need this job. I'll do anything to make this right. The final secret revealed in devastating detail. Brittany, there's one final thing you need to understand about the complete scope of what you've done. Zara's voice carried the finality of a federal judge delivering a life sentence. You didn't just slap a passenger. You didn't just slap your CEO. You slapped the person whose personal investment of $340 million saved this company from complete bankruptcy in 2019. I personally own 15% of every aircraft, every route, every seat in this entire fleet. The cabin fell completely silent, except for the sound of phones capturing every devastating word. Your entire lifetime earnings, every paycheck you've received in 3 years, every paycheck you ever will receive in any future employment, wouldn't cover the fuel costs for this single flight from New York to Atlanta. The moment of complete realization destroys everything. Derek was calculating desperately in his head. Employee 4847. 3 years of service, $38,400 annual salary, against a CEO who personally owned 15% of a $2.8 billion company and had saved it with her own money. Brittany had just assaulted someone worth more than $400 million, on camera, with federal witnesses, while 60,000 people watched live. Her children's college funds had just evaporated with one slap. Airport security stepped onto the aircraft with federal marshals behind them. Brittany McKenzie, you're under arrest for federal assault charges. The handcuffs clicked with a sound that 75,000 people heard through multiple live streams. Timeline. Landed. Gate B7. Federal authorities boarding. Corporate crisis mode fully activated. The aircraft door opened with a mechanical hiss, and the first person to step aboard wasn't airport security. It was FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez, badge prominently displayed, followed by DOT Inspector James Mitchell carrying official federal documentation. Behind them, 3 airport police officers waited with arrest equipment ready. Brittany stood frozen in the aisle, handcuffs glinting in the cabin lighting, while passengers continued filming every moment. Her world had collapsed in less than 15 minutes, but the full weight of consequences was just beginning to crush down on her. Dr. Washington, Agent Rodriguez approached with professional respect. I'm Special Agent Rodriguez, FBI. We received multiple reports of assault on federal property with potential civil rights violations. We understand you're the victim and the airline's CEO? That's correct, Agent Rodriguez. I have comprehensive documentation of the incident, including employee records, company policies violated, and preliminary damage assessments. Zara handed over a folder she'd organized during the final descent. This passenger, Mr. Carter, in seat 12A, is a federal prosecutor who witnessed everything. By the catastrophic numbers. While federal agents processed the scene, Zara's phone buzzed continuously with corporate updates that painted a devastating financial picture. Meridian Airlines stock, down $6.47 per share in 18 minutes. Market capitalization lost, $97.3 million, and climbing. Social media mentions, 127,000 negative posts across all platforms. Customer service calls, 891 complaints in 20 minutes. Booking cancellations, 234 flights canceled by passengers. Corporate travel contracts under review. 23 major companies suspending Meridian partnerships. Brittany McKenzie, employee ID 4847, Agent Rodriguez read from her official documentation, "You're being arrested for violation of USC Title 49, Section 46504 assault aboard an aircraft, USC Title 42, Section 1981 civil rights violations, and assault in the fourth degree under Georgia state law." The mobile corporate war room. Zara activated a conference call that transformed the aircraft cabin into a crisis management center. Her senior leadership team's voices filled the space through her phone's speaker. Chief Legal Officer Patricia Carter. "Zara, we have 17 news outlets requesting immediate statements. CNN wants you to live in 30 minutes. The NAACP has issued a statement demanding comprehensive investigation. Congressional offices are asking questions about federal aviation security." Chief HR Officer Michael Torres. "Employee hotline received 234 calls in 15 minutes. Staff are panicking about job security and company stability. Union representatives are demanding emergency meetings." Chief Financial Officer David Kim. "Stock price is in free fall. Trading volume has increased 340% in the past hour. We need decisive action to prevent complete market confidence collapse." Federal compliance nightmare unfolds. DOT, Inspector Mitchell consulted his federal guidelines. "Dr. Washington, this incident triggers automatic federal investigation of Meridian's entire crew training program. We'll need comprehensive records of all employee bias training, discrimination complaints from the past 5 years, and detailed analysis of company culture protocols." Inspector Mitchell, "We'll provide complete cooperation and transparency. However, I want to be clear about accountability. This incident reflects individual criminal behavior, not systemic company failure. We have robust policies that employee 4847 chose to violate." Agent Rodriguez continued processing Brittany's arrest. "Mrs. McKenzie, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in federal court. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you." Brittany's voice cracked. I want a lawyer. Please, this is all a misunderstanding. I was just doing my job." The corporate ultimatum delivered. With federal agents as witnesses, Zara addressed Brittany with devastating corporate precision. "Brittany McKenzie, effective immediately, you are terminated for cause from Meridian Airlines. Your actions have violated federal law, company policy, and basic human decency." She pulled out official termination documents prepared by her legal team. "You have exactly 2 choices, and these are your only options. Choice 1, accept immediate termination, sign a comprehensive confession acknowledging your criminal behavior, cooperate fully with federal prosecution, and never work in aviation again. Choice 2, face full federal prosecution without corporate cooperation, personal liability for all damages including the $97 million in stock losses, civil rights lawsuits, and industry-wide blacklisting that will prevent employment in any transportation sector." The financial devastation calculation. Chief Financial Officer Kim's voice carried over the phone with brutal precision. Current damage assessment as of 3:47 p.m. Stock price down $6.47 per share, represents $97.3 million in market cap loss. Customer service complaints have reached 1,100 calls. Estimated legal costs for federal defense, $2.3 million minimum. Insurance won't cover criminal assault, Brittany. You're personally liable for corporate damages. Your salary of $38,400 annually means you'd need to work 2,533 years without spending a single dollar to pay back just the stock losses. Margaret Foster whispered to her husband, "Harold, our retirement account just lost $8,000 because of her behavior." Federal authority intervention escalates. FBI agent Rodriguez addressed the broader situation. "Dr. Washington, this incident will require comprehensive federal investigation. We're treating this as a potential hate crime given the racial language documented on video. We'll need witness statements from all passengers, full employee records for the accused, and complete company policy documentation regarding discrimination training and enforcement." Robert Carter stepped forward professionally. "Agent Rodriguez, I'm Assistant Federal Prosecutor Carter. I'll be coordinating federal charges and ensuring this case receives appropriate priority in federal court. Corporate partners abandon ship. Rapidly. Zara's phone buzzed with devastating partner updates. American Express, reviewing corporate travel partnership worth $12 million annually. Delta Hotels, suspending crew accommodation contracts pending investigation. Boeing, requesting reassurance about corporate culture before finalizing $340 million aircraft orders. Chase Bank, corporate credit facilities under review due to reputational risk. The airline industry is built on trust and reputation, Zara announced to the cabin and live stream audiences. One employee's criminal behavior cannot be allowed to destroy the livelihoods of 12,000 honest, hard-working Meridian employees. The systematic destruction of Brittany's future. Agent Rodriguez continued documenting evidence. Mrs. Mackenzie, your assault was captured on 17 different recording devices. Federal prosecutors have a 97% conviction rate for assault cases with video evidence this comprehensive. Federal assault convictions carry maximum penalties of 20 years imprisonment and $250,000 in fines. Civil rights violations add additional federal penalties. State assault charges in Georgia carry separate sentencing. Brittany finally broke down completely. Please, Dr. Washington, I have children who depend on me. I'll lose my house, my car, everything. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. Corporate accountability versus personal responsibility. Zara's response was measured but unforgiving. Brittany, you're sorry because you got caught assaulting your CEO on live stream. You're not sorry for the assault itself or the racial profiling or the discrimination. You're sorry about the consequences. Your children will suffer because their mother chose violence and bigotry over professionalism. That's not my responsibility, that's yours. The industry-wide implications emerge. DOT Inspector Mitchell outlined the broader consequences. This incident will trigger mandatory federal review of discrimination training across all major airlines. Congress is already requesting hearings on aviation industry bias and passenger safety. The Department of Transportation will likely implement new federal requirements for crew body cameras, bias reporting systems, and enhanced passenger protection protocols. The economic domino effect. Accelerates real-time updates continued flowing. #boycott Meridian trending in 34 cities across America. Competitor airlines gaining market share in real-time corporate travel managers, removing Meridian from approved vendor lists. International aviation authorities requesting incident reports. Insurance companies calculating liability exposure for similar incidents. Federal prosecution machinery activates. Agent Rodriguez completed her preliminary investigation. Dr. Washington, we have sufficient evidence for immediate federal charges. Mrs. Mackenzie will be transported to federal detention for processing and arraignment. The U.S. Attorney's Office will be filing formal charges within 24 hours. Given the video evidence and federal prosecutor witness testimony, we anticipate guilty pleas or swift conviction. The final corporate decision. Zara addressed the cabin full of witnesses and the 89,000 live stream viewers. Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today was not a company failure, it was an individual's choice to commit violence based on racial prejudice. Meridian Airlines will not tolerate discrimination, bias, or violence from any employee at any level. We will implement immediate reforms to ensure this never happens again to any passenger on any flight. But make no mistake, accountability starts with consequences. Some actions cannot be forgiven, only prosecuted. Federal agents escorted Brittany off the aircraft in handcuffs while passengers continued recording. Her mugshot would be public record within hours, forever linking her name to the most expensive slap in aviation history. The corporate crisis was just beginning, but the criminal case was already over. $97 million lost in 18 minutes. One career destroyed forever. One company's reputation hangs in the balance. Real-life stories like this prove that power reveals itself when least expected, and justice sometimes comes with a price tag no one can afford. 48 hours later, the systematic transformation begins. The executive boardroom at Meridian Airlines headquarters buzzed with unprecedented activity. Wall-mounted screens displayed real-time data, stock price recovering to $46.18, social media sentiment improving from 89% negative to 34% negative, and federal investigators completing their preliminary findings. Zara stood before her senior leadership team, the red mark on her cheek now faded, but the impact of that slap reverberated through the entire aviation industry. Immediate consequences, delivered swiftly. Ladies and gentlemen, here are the personnel decisions effective immediately, Zara announced with clinical precision. Brittany McKenzie, terminated and arrested on federal charges, bail set at $50,000, criminal trial scheduled for federal court within 90 days, personal bankruptcy filing expected within weeks as legal costs mount. Derek Williams, senior flight attendant, suspended without pay for 60 days, mandatory bias training, probationary status for 1 year. His failure to intervene earlier nearly cost him his career. Purser, Janet Morrison, demoted to ground crew, salary reduced 15%, mandatory management retraining. Her delayed response to passenger assault violated federal aviation safety protocols. Airport security supervisor, reprimanded for inadequate response time. New protocols implemented for crew on passenger incidents. Brittany's public destruction. The morning news cycle had been brutal. Brittany's mugshot appeared on CNN, Fox News, and every major network. Her LinkedIn profile disappeared overnight. Her Facebook account deactivated after receiving thousands of angry messages. Local news stations camped outside her apartment building. Her forced public statement, released through her court-appointed attorney, appeared on Meridian's website. I, Brittany McKenzie, accept full responsibility for my criminal assault of Dr. Zara Washington. My actions were inexcusable, racially motivated, and violated everything decent people believe about treating others with respect. I apologize to Dr. Washington, to Meridian Airlines, and to every passenger who witnessed my shameful behavior. Revolutionary, systemic changes implemented. Within 72 hours, Zara had transformed corporate crisis into industry-leading reform. 1. Executive Incognito Program. All C-suite executives now fly monthly in random service classes without advance notice. Mystery evaluations became standard across the industry within 6 months. 2. Zero tolerance policy. Immediate termination for any discriminatory behavior, no exceptions, no appeals. The policy was so comprehensive that it became the template for federal aviation regulations. 3. Real-time accountability technology. The RespectFly mobile app launched within 30 days, allowing passengers to report biased incidents with guaranteed 2-hour response times and automatic $500 credits for verified discrimination. 4. Body camera program. All flight attendants on domestic routes now wear recording devices. The footage is automatically uploaded and reviewed by AI systems that flag potential bias incidents. 5. Independent Oversight Partnership. Monthly audits by the NAACP, Anti-Defamation League, and federal civil rights organizations. Meridian became the first airline with external civil rights monitoring. Financial recovery. Through accountability leadership. The numbers told an extraordinary story of crisis converted to competitive advantage. Stock price recovered to $48.91 within 1 week, higher than pre-incident levels. Customer satisfaction scores jumped to 96%. Industry-leading corporate bookings increased 23% as socially conscious companies chose Meridian. Employee retention improved to 94%, up from 67% industry average. Zero discrimination complaints for 6 consecutive months. Training revolution transforms industry. Meridian's comprehensive bias training program became the gold standard. 40 hours mandatory training for all customer-facing staff. Quarterly refresher courses with testing requirements. Real scenario training using actual incident videos. Partnership with leading universities for curriculum development. Failure to complete training results in immediate termination. Federal legislation emerges. Congressional hearings on airline discrimination led to the Dignity in Transit Act, requiring mandatory bias training across all transportation industries. Federal oversight of discrimination complaints. Whistleblower protection for employees reporting bias. Standardized passenger bill of rights. Legal framework revolutionized Meridian. Established unprecedented accountability measures. $250,000 victim compensation fund for future discrimination incidents. Class action waivers removed from all employee contracts. Quarterly civil rights compliance reports made public. Automatic federal investigation triggers for any assault allegations. Industry transformation accelerates. The Meridian model spread rapidly across aviation. 7 major airlines implemented identical policies. Within 8 weeks, FAA proposed mandatory bias training. Industry-wide international aviation organizations adopted similar standards. Corporate travel managers began requiring bias training certifications, media recognition, and academic study. Major publications recognized the transformation. Harvard Business Review. The Meridian Model. Crisis Leadership Masterclass. Forbes. How one CEO turned assault into $47 million brand value. Time Magazine. Zara Washington. Transformational Leader of the Year. Federal case study adopted by FBI Training Academy for hate crime investigation. Personal victory becomes professional legacy. Zara's response became required curriculum at Harvard Business School. Crisis Management and Corporate Responsibility. Stanford Graduate School. Leadership under Extreme Pressure. Wharton. Strategic Communication in Corporate Crisis. Federal Law Enforcement Academy. Civil Rights Investigation Best Practices. 6 months later, complete cultural transformation. The results spoke louder than any corporate mission statement. 847 employees completed enhanced training in the first month. Discrimination complaints dropped 82% company-wide. Employee referrals increased 156% as workplace culture improved. Voluntary diversity training requests up 340%. Customer loyalty scores reached all-time highs. Touching stories poured in from passengers who experienced the new Meridian culture. Flight attendants who once might have harbored biases now actively protected passenger dignity. The airline became a symbol of what American corporations could achieve when accountability met leadership. Meridian Airlines won the Corporate Transformation Award from the NAACP. 0 discrimination incidents in 180 consecutive days. The most expensive slap in aviation history had purchased the most comprehensive civil rights reform in corporate America. One moment of violence had created generations of protection for millions of travelers. 1 year later, the legacy of a single moment. Meridian Airlines Headquarters, Atlanta. Annual company meeting. Zara stands before 500 employees, with 365 days of dignity, zero-tolerance success displayed on screens behind her. The numbers tell an extraordinary story of transformation. The remarkable statistics: customer satisfaction, 97%, industry-leading. Employee retention, 94%, up from 67%. Stock price, $52.18, all-time high. Discrimination complaints, 0 for 8 consecutive months. The Respect Fly app processed 1,247 passenger reports, resolving 89 potential incidents before escalation. But the real victory extended far beyond one airline. The ripple effect. Across America, federal legislation passed. The Dignity in Transit Act now protects 180 million annual passengers across all transportation industries. 23 major corporations adopted executive incognito programs. International airlines requested consultation on discrimination policies. University business programs mandate study of the Meridian model. Personal growth transforms individual lives. Zara's TED Talk. The Power of Strategic Response reached 4.2 million views. Her Dignity and Travel Foundation provided legal support for discrimination victims across all transportation industries, helping 127 people seek justice in the past year. Brittany's journey toward redemption. After serving 90 days in federal prison and completing court-ordered sensitivity training, Brittany works at a nonprofit focused on racial reconciliation. Her children struggled initially, but community support helped them overcome the shame of their mother's actions. 1 year later, she wrote to Zara, "Dr. Washington, slapping you was the worst and best thing I ever did. Worst because I hurt another human being and traumatized my children. Best because it forced me to confront racism I didn't realize I carried. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just acknowledgement that people can change." Zara's private response. Brittany, accountability and growth can coexist. I'm glad you found your way. The numbers that changed everything. From one moment of violence came federal legislation protecting transportation passengers, corporate policies affecting 2.3 million industry workers, training programs reaching 890,000 aviation employees, technology solutions, protecting millions of annual travelers, values that endured. Intelligence over emotion, strategy over reaction, systemic change over individual revenge, dignity preserved while creating lasting impact for generations. The power of documentation. That slap lasted 1 second. The changes it created will last forever. When someone tries to diminish you, remember, your response determines not just your future, but potentially everyone who comes after you. The aviation industry changed because passengers filmed, shared, and refused to stay silent. Every video, every comment, every share was a vote for dignity. Your voice matters. Have you witnessed discrimination that seemed impossible to address? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience matters, your voice counts, and together we can create accountability everywhere. Black stories like Zara's prove that quiet power overcomes loud prejudice when strategic thinking meets moral courage. These life stories remind us that touching stories of justice often begin with someone's worst moment becoming their greatest opportunity for change. Join the movement. If this real-life story inspired you to believe that one person's strategic response can create massive systemic change, subscribe to Blacktail's Stories. Remember, the next time someone tries to put you in your place, make sure they understand exactly where your place is, and that it's probably higher than they ever imagined. Get on your knees, Grandma, now! Officer Daniels shoves Margaret Thompson against the police cruiser. Blood rushes to her face. 72 years of dignity crumbles in public view outside First National Bank. Daniels seizes her purse, violently dumps everything onto the hood. Wallet, keys, phone, ID card crashes to pavement. Officer Miller stomps on her license, grinds his heel. This account has millions. No way it belongs to someone like you. Margaret's voice doesn't waver. I've banked here since before you were born. Miller kicks her ID into the gutter. Got real identification? Or should we take this downtown? Margaret reaches for her phone. Daniels slaps her hand away. I said freeze! Her eyes blaze with something beyond anger. Calculation, patience, power. Little do they know who's waiting for Margaret's emergency call. Margaret parks her modest sedan in the bank's lot. She checks her appearance in the mirror. Pearl earrings, pressed blouse, hair neatly pinned. Today she'll withdraw funds for her grandson's college tuition. Inside First National Bank, customers receive prompt service. But when Margaret approaches the counter, Teller Brian gives her a dismissive glance. How can I help you? His tone lacks the warmth he showed previous customers. I'd like to withdraw $15,000 from my account. Margaret slides her ID and bank card across the counter. Brian's eyebrows raise. He examines her ID closely, comparing it to her face multiple times. This is a significant sum. Do you understand what you're asking for? Margaret has held this account for decades. Yes, I understand banking transactions. Brian whispers to his manager, Sandra, who approaches with crossed arms. There seems to be a problem with your request. Margaret stands straight. What problem? We need to verify your identity further. These fraud prevention measures protect people like you. Margaret notices Sandra doesn't question the ID of the younger white customer at the next window, making a similar withdrawal. People like me? Margaret asks. Sandra ignores the question. Wait here. She disappears into a back office, Margaret's ID and bank card in hand. Through the window, Margaret sees Sandra speaking to security guards, who glance at her repeatedly. One guard makes a call, his eyes never leaving Margaret. Outside, a police cruiser pulls up. Margaret clutches her purse tighter. The retirement gift from her son rests inside, a special phone with a single button for emergencies. She never thought banking would become an emergency. The approaching officers have already decided what kind of woman Margaret is, and it's not the account holder of $1.2 million. Officers Daniels and Miller enter the bank. Sandra immediately directs them to Margaret. The bank falls silent. Other customers stare. Ma'am, step outside with us. Officer Daniels gestures toward the door. Margaret stands firm. I've done nothing wrong. I'm a customer, withdrawing my own money. Miller steps closer. We can do this the easy way or make a scene. Your choice. Margaret walks outside with dignity, her back straight despite her pounding heart. In the parking lot, away from witnesses, their tone changes. We've had several fraud cases involving elderly accounts. Daniels positions himself to block Margaret's path back to the bank. I'm simply withdrawing money for my grandson's tuition. Margaret opens her purse for her secondary ID. Miller misinterprets the movement. His hand moves to his weapon. Keep your hands where we can see them. Margaret freezes. I'm getting my passport. Slowly. Daniels watches her every move. She produces her passport, perfectly valid. Miller barely glances at it. This could be fake, too. These scammers have good forgeries now. Margaret's frustration builds. Call my son. He'll verify who I am. Daniels laughs. Everyone has a son who'll fix everything. Inside the bank, customers press against windows. No one intervenes. Sandra watches with arms crossed, vindicated. Margaret notices Brian looking uncomfortable but silent. I've banked here since before you were born, Margaret tells the officers. My late husband and I opened this account in 1980. Right, Miller says. And I'm sure you drive a Mercedes, too. Margaret thinks of her son's warning last Christmas. Mom, sometimes people won't see your worth until you show them your power. She hadn't understood then. She does now. As the officers radio for backup, they don't notice Margaret's fingers carefully pressing the emergency button on her phone. The situation intensifies as a small crowd gathers at a distance. Officer Daniels demands Margaret's purse. We need to check for false identification documents. Margaret holds her ground. You have no right to search my belongings without cause. Obstruction, Miller mutters. That's cause enough. They take her purse anyway. Daniels dumps the contents onto the patrol car's hood. Wallet, tissues, lipstick, reading glasses, phone, and a small framed photo of her family scatter across the hot metal surface. Margaret reaches for the photo as it slides toward the edge. Miller blocks her. Don't touch anything. The frame falls, glass shattering on the pavement. Margaret's son's face smiles up from the cracked frame. That's my family. Her voice trembles. ID fraud is a family business now? Daniels picks through her wallet, removing cards, examining each with exaggerated scrutiny. Margaret notices her hand shaking. She clasps them together to hide her humiliation. Social Security cards don't look like this anymore, Miller says, though Margaret's card is perfectly authentic. That card was issued in 1968. Her patience wears thin. Convenient excuse. Miller places her belongings in an evidence bag, including her phone. Margaret's stomach tightens. The emergency call had connected. Her son would have heard everything. A third officer arrives. Johnson surveys the scene, immediately deferring to his colleague's assessment without questioning. "Ma'am, we're taking you in for questioning regarding identity fraud." Margaret straightens her spine. "I want to speak to my attorney." The officers exchange amused glances. "You have an attorney on retainer?" Daniels snickers. "I do." Margaret's voice finds new strength. "And he's very good at his job." Officer Johnson steps closer, intimidating. "Until then, you'll come with us." Margaret feels the stares of onlookers. Some film with their phones. None intervene. Sandra emerges from the bank holding paperwork. Her account shows unusual activity, large deposits quarterly from Washington. "Government fraud, too?" Miller raises his eyebrows. "That's federal territory." Margaret almost laughs. If only they knew the source of those deposits. As they prepare to handcuff her, Margaret speaks clearly. "Before you continue, I suggest you check my other identification." "What other ID? We've seen your fake driver's license and passport." Margaret stands tall. "The one my son insists I carry, in the hidden compartment of my wallet." When Officer Daniels reluctantly checks, his face drains of color as he reads the emergency contact information on the special government-issued family ID. The atmosphere shifts as Daniels stares at the ID card, suddenly unsure. He shows it to Miller, whose cocky demeanor falters. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Attorney General Elijah Thompson is concluding a meeting when his security detail interrupts. "Sir, you have an emergency call from your mother's panic button." Elijah's expression hardens as he listens to the audio transmission. His mother's voice, the officer's dismissive tones, the sound of her belongings scattered across a car hood. He hears everything. "Get me the police chief in that jurisdiction. Now!" His voice remains measured but cold. "And prepare my plane." Back at the bank, Margaret notices the change in the officer's behavior. "This says your emergency contact is—" Miller trails off. "My son, Elijah Thompson." Margaret's voice carries quiet strength. Johnson shakes his head. "That can't be right. The Attorney General?" "The same." Margaret meets his gaze. "My son values family above all else." Daniels fumbles with his radio, steps away to make a call. His posture changes from authoritative to defensive. Margaret uses their distraction to assess the damage. Her belongings remain scattered, her dignity challenged, her community failed to stand up for her. She makes a silent vow. This treatment won't happen to anyone else at this bank. Inside, Sandra watches with growing concern. The manager appears beside her, questioning the police presence. Brian, the teller, approaches them nervously. "Her account details check out. She's been a customer for decades, premium account holder." The manager's face pales. "Why wasn't I informed immediately?" Brian swallows hard. "Sandra said she matched a fraud profile." "What profile?" the manager demands. Sandra stammers. "She wanted to withdraw a large sum. It seemed suspicious." "Because she's elderly? Black?" The manager's voice rises. Outside, Daniels returns, his demeanor completely transformed. "Mrs. Thompson, there seems to have been a misunderstanding." Margaret says nothing. The time for explanations has passed. "We'll need to verify this ID, of course," Miller adds weakly. "Of course you will." Margaret's voice is ice. "And while you're at it, perhaps explain why my valid identification was insufficient before you knew who my son was." Johnson begins gathering her belongings, handling them with new care. Daniel's radio crackles. The voice on the other end sounds urgent. Margaret knows that voice. Elijah's distinctive tone carries authority even through the static. The officer's face drains of color as he listens. "Yes, sir. Understood, sir. Right away, sir." The patrol car's lights shut off. The evidence bag opens. Margaret's belongings return to her hands with apologies, but it's too late for sorry. 30,000 feet above, the Attorney General's plane changes course, heading directly toward his mother, and a reckoning none of these officers are prepared to face. News travels fast in small towns. Within an hour, local media vans appear outside the bank. Someone leaked that something big is happening. Inside the bank, the manager scrambles. "Get Mrs. Thompson into my office immediately. Full privacy." Sandra protests. She was trying to withdraw an unusual amount. "She's a premium client with over $1 million in assets with us," the manager hisses. "And you called the police because?" Sandra falters. She didn't look like she could have that kind of money. The manager stares in disbelief. "I'll deal with you later." Outside, Officers Daniels and Miller receive increasingly frantic calls from their superior. "Do you have any idea who you've detained?" The police chief's voice booms through the radio. "The Attorney General himself called our department." Margaret sits calmly on a bench, declining offers to wait inside. "I prefer to stay where everyone can see what happens next," she tells them. The officers hover nervously nearby, no longer detaining her but unwilling to leave the scene. Daniels approaches hesitantly. "Mrs. Thompson, we were just doing our jobs." Margaret looks through him. "Your job is to protect and serve all citizens equally." Miller joins, defensive. "We had reports of fraud." "From whom?" Margaret challenges. "The bank teller who decided I didn't look like I belonged?" Neither officer answers. More patrol cars arrive. The police chief emerges, straightening his uniform before approaching Margaret. "Mrs. Thompson, on behalf of our department, I extend my sincerest apologies for this unfortunate incident." Margaret's response is measured. "Unfortunate" suggests accident. This was deliberate profiling. The chief's smile falters. "I assure you we'll conduct a full investigation." "So will my son," Margaret replies. Social media buzzes with partial videos of the incident. Comments flood in. "Another case of banking while black," and "Wait until they find out who she is." The bank manager emerges, sweat beading on his forehead. "Mrs. Thompson, please come inside. We've prepared everything for your withdrawal." As Margaret finally enters the bank, a sleek black government vehicle pulls into the parking lot, followed by 3 more, and the real storm hasn't even begun. The government vehicles form a perimeter around the bank entrance. Men and women in suits with earpieces create a corridor of authority. Inside, the bank manager personally counts out Margaret's withdrawal, hands shaking. "Mrs. Thompson, I want to assure you that First National values all our customers. This incident doesn't reflect our policies." Margaret accepts the cash, placing it carefully in her purse. "Yet it happened in your bank, under your supervision." Sandra has been removed from the floor. Through the office blinds, Margaret sees her gesturing frantically to HR personnel. Brian, the teller, approaches cautiously. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm truly sorry. I should have verified your account before involving security." Margaret studies him. "Yes, you should have." The manager interjects. "We're prepared to offer compensation for your distress." "I don't want your money," Margaret interrupts. "I want systemic change." A commotion outside draws everyone's attention. The bank falls silent as Attorney General Elijah Thompson enters, flanked by his security detail and assistants carrying briefcases. At 6'4", Elijah commands the room instantly. His tailored suit and deliberate movements speak of power held with responsibility. The police chief rushes forward. "Attorney General Thompson, we're handling the situation." "Are you?" Elijah's voice cuts through excuses. His focus remains on his mother. He crosses to Margaret, concern breaking through his professional facade. Mom, are you all right? For the first time, Margaret's composure wavers. She pats his hand. I'm fine, Elijah. But others might not be so fortunate. Elijah turns to his team. Full investigation, bank policies, police response, individual actions, everything. One assistant steps forward. Sir, we've already pulled 7 similar complaints against this branch in the past year. The manager pales. Those were resolved. Through settlements and NDAs, the assistant finishes. Not anymore. Officers Daniels and Miller attempt to blend into the background. Elijah notices. Officers, my team will need your badge numbers and full statements. The local news crews outside multiply. National outlets have picked up the story. Attorney General's mother profiled at bank. As Elijah guides his mother toward the exit, he whispers something that makes her smile for the first time today. Something about teaching a masterclass in consequences. The bank's regional director arrives breathless, having broken speed limits to get there. He finds the lobby transformed into an impromptu command center. Department of Justice staff set up workstations. Officials interview employees and review security footage. The bank's computer systems undergo audit. The regional director seeks out Elijah. Attorney General Thompson, surely we can handle this privately. Elijah looks up from reviewing documents. Like the previous incidents were handled, with silence and payoffs? Margaret sits nearby, observing. She notices Sandra being escorted to a private room for questioning. Her earlier confidence completely vanished. Outside, community members gather. Word has spread about what happened to Miss Margaret, a beloved former school teacher who tutored generations of local children. Former students arrive with handmade signs. Justice for Miss Margaret, and End Banking Discrimination Now. The police chief attempts damage control with the media. This was an isolated incident. He's interrupted by community voices shouting incidents of their own. They did the same to my grandfather. I was denied a loan 6 times with perfect credit. Margaret watches through the window, her personal humiliation transforming into something larger. This isn't just about her anymore. Elijah approaches his mother. The Federal Banking Commission is sending representatives. This branch's practices warrant full review. Margaret nods. What about the officers? Administrative leave, pending investigation. Elijah's expression darkens. Their body cameras conveniently malfunctioned during your encounter. Convenient indeed. Margaret straightens her pearl necklace. What happens next? Justice happens next. Elijah checks his watch. The bank's CEO is landing in 20 minutes. The police commissioner in 30. The regional director overhears, panic evident. The CEO is coming here? Today? When the Attorney General's mother is profiled and humiliated, people tend to clear their schedules. Elijah's tone leaves no room for discussion. Margaret stands, smoothing her skirt. I should freshen up before meeting the CEO. As she heads to the restroom, bank employees watch in silence. The woman they dismissed hours ago now commands more respect than their highest executives. In the privacy of the bathroom, Margaret finally allows herself a moment of emotion. Not for her own ordeal, but for the revelation of how many others suffered without the power of a son in high office. The bank's atmosphere crackles with tension as the CEO of First National Banking Corporation, Harrison Edwards, strides through the doors. His tailored suit and confident demeanor suggest a man accustomed to controlling rooms, not answering to them. Behind him follows Police Commissioner Davis, whose military posture contrasts with the anxiety in his eyes. They find Attorney General Thompson reviewing evidence with his team. The Justice Department's efficiency has already compiled a damning report. Attorney General, Edwards extends his hand. This unfortunate incident was neither unfortunate nor isolated, Elijah interrupts, not taking the offered hand. My team has identified 27 similar incidents at your branches nationwide in the past year alone. Edwards falters. I wasn't aware. That's the problem. Elijah gestures to the stack of complaints. Your bank settled these quietly. No policy changes, no accountability. Margaret returns, composed and regal. Edwards immediately approaches her. Mrs. Thompson, please accept my personal apology for your experience today. Margaret studies him. Do you know why I was withdrawing money, Mr. Edwards? The CEO hesitates. I understand it was for your grandson's tuition. Partially correct. Margaret opens her purse, retrieving an elegant business card. The Thompson Family Foundation is establishing a scholarship fund for underprivileged students. Today's withdrawal was the first installment. Edwards examines the card, recognition dawning. The Thompson Foundation, a powerful philanthropic organization with assets exceeding $50 million. You're that Margaret Thompson? His voice barely contains his shock. The very same. Margaret's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Former Chief Financial Officer of Westland Industries, before my retirement. The revelation ripples through the room. The elderly woman they profiled isn't just the Attorney General's mother. She's a financial powerhouse in her own right. I started as a bank teller in 1968, Margaret continues. Worked my way through night school while raising Elijah alone after my husband died. Became the first black female CFO in our state's history. Commissioner Davis clears his throat. Mrs. Thompson, had our officers known, that's precisely the problem. Margaret cuts him off. Respect shouldn't depend on status or connections. Elijah steps forward. My mother sits on the Federal Reserve Advisory Council. She helped draft banking regulations you operate under, Mr. Edwards. The CEO pales visibly. And yet, Elijah continues, she was treated like a criminal in your establishment because of assumptions based on her age and race. Margaret addresses the room. I could have presented my credentials immediately. I chose not to. Why? Sandra asks from the edge of the gathering. Because no one should need impressive titles to be treated with basic dignity. Margaret's voice carries decades of wisdom. Today revealed the treatment ordinary citizens receive. The Assistant Attorney General approaches with a tablet. Sir, we've compiled the initial report. Systematic discrimination patterns are evident. Edwards attempts to regain control. Whatever policy adjustments are needed. This goes beyond policy adjustments. Elijah's tone is final. The Department of Justice is opening a formal investigation into discriminatory practices at First National Bank. The CEO stiffens. On what grounds? Violation of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, the Fair Housing Act, and potentially the Civil Rights Act. Elijah lists each charge deliberately. And that's before addressing the police misconduct. Commissioner Davis interjects. The officers were responding to a reported fraud. With excessive force and clear bias, Elijah finishes. Their body cameras mysteriously malfunctioned only during this encounter. Outside, the crowd has grown. Community members share stories of similar treatment. News crews broadcast live. Margaret watches it all, her banker's mind calculating the impact. Your stock will drop 15 points by morning, Mr. Edwards. The CEO knows she's right. As Margaret prepares to leave with her son, she turns to the assembled bank leadership with one final revelation. By the way, I've served on your bank's board of directors selection committee for the past decade, and your term review is next month. 1 week later, the consequences unfold with the precision of dominoes falling. First National Bank's stock plummets 18%, worse than Margaret predicted. Shareholders demand answers. The board calls an emergency meeting. At Justice Department headquarters, Elijah leads a briefing on the widening investigation. We've received over 200 new complaints since news broke. He gestures to the map showing affected branches nationwide, pattern and practice of discrimination, particularly against elderly minorities. His team presents evidence. internal bank memos encouraging scrutiny of unusual withdrawals with coded language about non-typical account holders. Meanwhile, Margaret hosts community leaders in her modest home. The living room transforms into a command center for systemic change. It's not enough to punish individuals, Margaret tells them. We need to change how financial institutions operate. Across town, officers Daniels and Miller face separate disciplinary hearings. Body camera footage from prior incidents reveals a pattern of selective enforcement. Daniels argues, "We were following training protocols for fraud prevention." The review board chairperson responds, "Yet white customers making identical transactions faced no such scrutiny." At First National's headquarters, CEO Edwards faces the board's fury. "This PR disaster has cost us millions," one board member fumes. "Major institutional investors are threatening to divest." Edwards defends himself. "How could I know every incident at every branch?" "That's literally your job," another board member counters. "And Mrs. Thompson isn't just anyone. She literally helped write banking regulations." Sandra, the bank manager who initiated the incident, clears her desk under security supervision. Her termination letter cites violation of customer dignity protocols and discriminatory actions. Brian, the teller, receives different news. His honest testimony about systematic bias earns him whistleblower protection and a transfer to corporate compliance. Margaret declines all media interviews except one, with a local high school journalism student whose grandmother faced similar discrimination. "This isn't about revenge," Margaret explains. "It's about reform." The Justice Department investigation expands to 3 more national banks with similar complaint patterns. Elijah recuses himself from direct involvement due to personal connection, but his top deputies press forward. Banking regulators announce emergency audits of complaint records and dispute resolutions across the financial sector. First National announces a comprehensive plan: implicit bias training, transaction review overhaul, community accountability panels, and a $50 million commitment to underserved communities. Too little, too late. Class action lawsuits emerge. The bank's legal team warns of potential 9-figure settlements. At police headquarters, Commissioner Davis implements new protocols for responding to financial institutions. Verification before action becomes the mandate. Margaret uses her position on financial boards to push for industry-wide change. Her proposal: blind transaction reviews, customer advocacy offices with real authority, and financial literacy programs in underserved communities. The Thompson Family Foundation announces a new initiative: legal support for victims of financial discrimination nationwide. In a private meeting with Elijah, Margaret reviews the investigation's progress. "The systemic issues run deeper than we thought," Elijah explains. "Their algorithms flagged accounts with specific withdrawal patterns as high risk when the account holders were minorities, but not for white customers with identical patterns." Margaret nods. "Technology embedded with the same biases as its creators." "Exactly. And we found email chains where executives explicitly discussed burying complaints to avoid regulatory scrutiny." Margaret sips her tea. "Any resistance from other banks?" "Initially, until we showed them the data. Now they're falling over themselves to implement voluntary reforms before we compel them." The fallout extends beyond banking. Police departments nationwide review their response protocols for calls from businesses. Training modules now include case studies on implicit bias in commercial settings. Sandra struggles to find new employment. Her interview at a smaller bank ends abruptly when the hiring manager recognizes her name from news coverage. Officers Daniels and Miller receive formal reprimands in their personnel files. Their union representation argues against termination, securing their jobs but ensuring they'll never advance beyond their current ranks. Edwards faces a shareholder revolt. The board chair calls him at home. "We need your resignation by morning. The damage control can't begin with you still at the helm." The Thompson case becomes required reading in business ethics courses. Harvard Business School develops a case study. When bias meets banking, the true cost of discrimination. Margaret's phone rings constantly with invitations to speak at financial conferences, civil rights events, and corporate training sessions. She accepts selectively, focusing on forums where policy changes happen. Elijah's political capital grows. His principled handling of his mother's case demonstrates his commitment to equal justice regardless of personal connection. First National's competitors seize the opportunity, launching targeted marketing campaigns, emphasizing their commitment to dignity for all customers. Account transfers from First National surge. Brian receives a promotion to lead a new customer advocacy division, reporting directly to the board rather than management. His first initiative, anonymous transaction audits to eliminate bias. The financial industry's trade publications debate the Thompson effect. One editorial reads, "The question isn't whether your institution has bias, it's whether you'll address it before your own Margaret Thompson walks through your door." As bank executives across the country review their vulnerability to similar scandals, they discover something alarming. Margaret Thompson sits on advisory boards for regulatory agencies overseeing each of them. 60 days after the incident, a Senate Banking Committee hearing convenes. Marble columns and wood paneling create an atmosphere of gravitas as cameras broadcast nationwide. CEO Edwards occupies the witness table, flanked by nervous attorneys. Sweat beads on his forehead under the harsh lights. Senator Claudia Morales leads the questioning. "Mr. Edwards, your bank's internal documents show systematic targeting of minority customers for enhanced scrutiny. Was this official policy?" Edwards adjusts his tie. "Absolutely not. These were isolated incidents of employees misinterpreting fraud prevention guidelines." Interesting. The senator holds up a document. "This memo from your executive team refers to demographic risk factors in transaction approval. Please explain." Edwards stumbles through jargon-filled excuses. The committee remains unimpressed. In the audience, Margaret sits composed, watching the man who once commanded the financial world reduced to defensive mumbling. During a recess, Edwards approaches her cautiously. "Mrs. Thompson, surely we can find resolution without destroying an institution that serves millions." Margaret's response is measured. "Institutions that discriminate don't truly serve anyone, Mr. Edwards." The hearing resumes with testimony from former customers. Their stories form a damning pattern, identical to Margaret's experience but without her resources or connections. Commissioner Davis faces his own reckoning before the Civil Rights Commission. Body camera reviews reveal a department-wide pattern of different response standards based on caller demographics. Officers responded with full tactical teams to reports from affluent areas, the commission chair notes, while similar calls from minority neighborhoods received delayed or minimal response. Davis offers his resignation effective immediately. Back at the Senate hearing, Edwards attempts damage control. "We've implemented comprehensive reforms," Senator Morales interrupts. "After getting caught. Your bank had hundreds of complaints before Mrs. Thompson's incident. The only difference was her son's position." Edwards has no answer. The committee announces its findings: sanctions against First National Bank, mandatory compliance audits, and referrals to the Justice Department for potential criminal charges against specific executives who buried complaints. That evening, First National's board votes unanimously. Edwards is terminated, effective immediately. His golden parachute shrinks as clawback provisions activate due to leadership failures resulting in regulatory action. Officers Daniels and Miller receive their verdicts: termination, loss of pension eligibility, and permanent notation in law enforcement databases preventing future police employment. Sandra, the bank manager, finds herself unemployable in financial services. Her name becomes a case study in banking ethics courses. The bank's regional director faces federal charges for destroying evidence of previous discrimination complaints. Community activists celebrate these individual consequences, but focus on Margaret's bigger mission: systemic reform. National news covers the story's resolution. A prominent anchor concludes, "The swift fall of banking titan Harrison Edwards sends a clear message to corporate America. Discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's financially catastrophic." Margaret watches the coverage from home, her satisfaction tempered by awareness that most victims lack her advantages. Elijah calls. "The president is considering an executive order on financial inclusion based on our recommendations." "Good," Margaret responds. "But legislation would be better. Executive orders change with administrations." "Already working on it," Elijah assures her. "Senator Morales is drafting a bill now." As the old guard falls, financial institutions scramble to avoid being the next target, unaware that Margaret has already provided the Justice Department with insider information on discriminatory practices at 3 more major banks. 1 year later, the financial landscape looks markedly different. Margaret's experience has catalyzed change beyond individual penalties. The Banking Equality Act passes with bipartisan support, establishing new standards for financial institutions. Anonymous transaction review protocols that remove demographic indicators. Mandatory reporting of all service refusals and their justifications. Customer advocates with real authority in every branch. Quarterly bias audits with public results. First National Bank, under new leadership, transforms into an industry model. Their community banking initiative opens branches in previously underserved neighborhoods. Hiring practices prioritize staff reflecting community demographics. Margaret chairs the Federal Financial Inclusion Commission, a new regulatory body with oversight authority. Her decades of financial expertise, combined with personal experience, make her uniquely qualified. Law enforcement undergoes similar transformation. New training protocols focus on equitable response regardless of neighborhood or caller demographics. Body cameras now activate automatically when officers respond to financial institutions. The Thompson Foundation establishes a banking rights hotline, providing immediate legal assistance to anyone experiencing discrimination. Their cases decrease month by month as reforms take hold. Former Officer Daniels, now working security at a shopping mall, watches news coverage of the changes. His perspective has evolved from defensiveness to reluctant understanding. Brian, the teller who spoke up, now leads First National's compliance department. His team reviews transaction patterns for bias indicators, addressing problems before they become incidents. In community centers nationwide, financial literacy programs flourish. Margaret personally teaches a monthly class for seniors navigating modern banking. Police Commissioner Davis's replacement, a former civil rights attorney, implements community oversight boards with actual disciplinary authority. The Justice Department's Banking Discrimination Task Force, inspired by Margaret's case, recovers over $500 million for victims of systematic discrimination across the financial sector. Edwards, the former CEO, attempts to rehabilitate his image through philanthropic giving. His applications to serve on corporate boards receive consistent rejection. Sandra, working at a small retail shop, watches customers carefully count their money. She recognizes faces from her banking days. People she once dismissed now avoid her register. At the annual Banking Industry Conference, Margaret receives a standing ovation as she presents the new inclusive banking standards. Some executives applaud reluctantly, aware that resistance would be both futile and revealing. Dignity isn't a privilege reserved for the powerful, Margaret tells the audience. It's a right belonging to everyone who walks through your doors. As banking executives implement changes mandated by the new regulations, their data reveals an unexpected truth-inclusive banking practices actually increase profits by expanding loyal customer bases. 2 years after the incident, Margaret sits in a different bank branch in the same town. The space has been redesigned open, welcoming, with privacy areas for all transactions. Her grandson, now in his 2nd year of college, accompanies her. His scholarship fund, established through the Thompson Foundation, supports 15 students from underserved communities. The young teller greets Margaret with genuine respect. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. How can I assist you today?" Margaret completes her transaction smoothly. No questions about her identification, no suspicious glances, just professional service. Outside, she notices Officer Johnson, the third officer from that day directing traffic. He's undergone the mandatory retraining, now serving as the department's community liaison. He notices Margaret and nods respectfully. She returns the gesture without bitterness. Accountability has been achieved. Grudges serve no purpose. At her modest home, community leaders gather for their monthly strategy meeting. What began as response to one incident has evolved into ongoing civic engagement. Margaret serves tea in her living room. Our work isn't finished, but the foundation is stronger. Her phone rings Elijah calling from Washington. She puts him on speaker. The president is signing the National Financial Inclusion Act tomorrow, he announces. Your testimony made the difference, Mom. Margaret smiles. Not just mine. Everyone who shared their stories. Later, she visits First National Bank's main branch, now a community banking center with financial literacy classes and small business support services. Brian, promoted to Regional Director of Community Banking, gives her a tour. Applications for first-time business loans are up 340% in minority communities. Margaret examines the new transaction protocols on his tablet. Customer photos no longer appear during initial reviews. Accounts are evaluated on financial metrics alone. The system works better for everyone now, Brian explains. Even our shareholders are happier. A plaque in the lobby commemorates the transformation. Dignity and respect for every customer. Below it, a smaller inscription. Inspired by Margaret Thompson. She runs her fingers over the words, remembering that day's humiliation, now transformed into lasting change. At the police academy, new recruits study the Thompson case as mandatory curriculum. They learn about implicit bias, equitable enforcement, and the consequences of selective justice. Sandra, who lost her banking career, now works at the community center. Her role, teaching financial professionals about the human impact of discrimination. Her first-hand experience proves valuable, her redemption earned through genuine contrition and effort. Margaret drives home past the spot where officers once surrounded her. The memory no longer stings. The sidewalk where her family photo shattered now features a small community garden. At home, she places fresh flowers beside her late husband's photo. We did good work today, James. She opens her laptop to work on her memoir, Banking on Dignity, How One Incident Changed an Industry. Publishers competed fiercely for the rights. The evening news features a story about another bank's community initiative, inspired by First National's success. The movement spreads, driven by both moral imperative and proven profitability. Margaret's phone buzzes with a message from her grandson. Grandma, my professor used your case study in class today. She smiles, remembering something her mother told her decades ago. True power isn't about making people fear you. It's about making systems work justly for everyone. The lesson endures. Dignity isn't negotiable. Justice delayed isn't justice denied if it leads to lasting change. And sometimes, the most powerful response to discrimination isn't revenge. It's reform. As Margaret's story reaches millions through her memoir and news coverage, the impact spreads beyond banking and law enforcement into other industries. Healthcare providers review their triage protocols after reports surface of similar bias patterns. Retail chains implement blind shopper audits to ensure consistent service. Educational institutions examine their disciplinary records for demographic disparities. Margaret appears on a national morning show, poised and dignified in the same pearl necklace she wore that fateful day. What would you tell someone facing discrimination without an attorney general for a son? The host asks. Margaret smiles. Document everything. Connect with advocacy groups. Remember your worth doesn't depend on others' recognition. And know that for every Margaret Thompson with connections, we are building systems to support those without them. Social media campaigns spread her wisdom. #dignity for all and #banking. while black become rallying points for continued vigilance and reform. The former bank building where the incident occurred has been renovated into a community financial center. Its new mission statement, prominently displayed. Financial dignity is a universal right. Officer Daniels, working his mall security job, watches a teenager being unfairly accused of shoplifting. His new perspective leads him to intervene differently than he once would have. Small changes ripple outward. Margaret establishes a scholarship for ethics in law enforcement available to children of police officers who demonstrate commitment to equitable justice. The Thompson Foundation launches a mobile app where users can report and track discrimination incidents, creating data patterns that drive further reforms. First National Bank becomes the most profitable in its class, disproving critics who claimed inclusive practices would hurt bottom lines. Other institutions race to adopt similar models. Elijah continues his work as Attorney General, his perspective forever shaped by his mother's experience. Policy reforms bear the subtle hallmark of personal understanding. Margaret's story becomes a case study in business schools and law enforcement academies nationwide. Students debate the ethical implications and systemic changes required for true equality. At community meetings, citizens share their own stories of standing up against bias. The conversation continues, each voice strengthening the movement. Did Margaret's journey move you? This is just one of countless stories of dignity, power, and transformation. Every week, we bring you true tales of everyday people standing up against injustice and creating lasting change. Stories that make you think, feel, and most importantly, act. Hit that like button if you believe in dignity for all. Subscribe to Beat Stories for more powerful narratives that prove one person can transform broken systems. Turn on notifications so you never miss our new releases every Thursday. Comment below with your own story of standing up against bias or discrimination. Your voice matters here.
You've seen the story. Now what will you do with it? At Beat Stories, we believe reflection is good, but action is better. Subscribe, share, speak, because awareness is only the first step.